My mother-in-law tricked me into signing a prenup, so I secretly hid my $2 million inheritance. There are moments in life when you realize, with absolute clarity, that the person you love comes with baggage you never signed up for. For me, that moment came 3 weeks before my wedding, sitting across from my future mother-in-law at a polished mahogany table in her lawyer's office, a document I hadn't fully read sliding toward me across the gleaming surface. My name is Lauren. I'm 31 years old, a pediatrician in private practice in Dallas, Texas. I grew up in a middle-class family in Oklahoma. My father was a high school principal, my mother a librarian. We never had much money, but we had plenty of love, and I learned early that hard work was the only path to anything worthwhile. I worked my way through college and medical school. Scholarships, student loans, part-time jobs, years of ramen noodles and sleepless nights. By the time I finished my residency, I had nearly $200,000 in student debt and a career I loved. Then I met Christopher. Christopher was handsome in that effortless way some people are, tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was a financial advisor, successful and polished, with a confidence that came from never having to worry about money. We met at a charity gala. I was there because my hospital had bought a table. He was there because his family had sponsored the event. We danced, we talked, we exchanged numbers. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Meeting his family was overwhelming. The Ashworths, I know, another Ashworth family, but different from the previous story, were old money. Not inherited wealth from generations past, but the kind of wealth that comes from building a business and then building another one. Christopher's father, Richard, had started a financial services firm 30 years ago and turned it into a regional powerhouse. His mother, Eleanor, had never worked a day in her life, unless you count managing the household staff and planning charity galas. Their home was a sprawling estate in Highland Park, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Texas. The furniture was antique, the art was original, and the guest house was bigger than my childhood home. From the beginning, Eleanor made it clear that I was not what she would have chosen for her son. "Christopher tells me you're a doctor," she said at our first meeting, her voice dripping with false warmth. "A pediatrician. How lovely. It must be so fulfilling to work with children." Not lucrative, of course, but fulfilling. The subtext was clear. I wasn't rich. I wasn't from a wealthy family. I wasn't good enough for her son. I let it slide. I'd dealt with difficult people before. I told myself that Eleanor would warm up to me eventually, that she'd see beyond my bank account to the person I was. I was wrong. The engagement happened 18 months into our relationship. Christopher proposed on a beach in Cancun, down on one knee, a diamond ring glinting in the sunset. I said yes without hesitation. I loved him. I loved his kindness, his humor, the way he looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. His mother's reaction to the engagement was tepid. "Well, I suppose it was inevitable," Eleanor said when Christopher called to tell her. "We'll need to discuss the prenup, of course." The word hit me like a slap. Prenup. "Mom, we don't need," Christopher started. "Nonsense. Every marriage in this family has a prenup. It's not personal. It's just business." I told myself it was fine. A prenup was just a document. It didn't mean anything about our love, our commitment, our future together. I'd sign it, and Eleanor would stop interfering, and we'd move on with our lives. I was naive. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of planning and stress. Eleanor took over everything, the venue, the caterer, the guest list. My mother tried to help, but Eleanor dismissed her suggestions with a wave of her manicured hand. "Let me handle it, dear. I've done this before." My parents, who had saved for years to contribute to the wedding, were relegated to the sidelines. They smiled, nodded, and pretended not to be hurt. Then came the prenup. "You'll need to come to our lawyer's office to sign it," Eleanor said, handing me a thick document. "Just a formality." Christopher's father will explain everything. I took the document home, intending to read it carefully. But between my shifts at the hospital, 12-hour days, exhausted nights, I barely had time to skim it. The language was dense, full of legal jargon I didn't fully understand. The gist seemed simple: anything Christopher brought into the marriage remained his. Anything I brought into the marriage remained mine. Any assets acquired during the marriage would be split according to Texas law. It seemed fair enough. What do you think? Christopher asked, watching me flip through the pages. I think it's fine. I don't have any assets to protect anyway. He laughed. Neither do I, really. The family money is in trusts. This is just for show. Your mother? Always. I signed the document 3 weeks before the wedding, in Eleanor's lawyer's office, with Eleanor watching from across the table. She smiled when I put down the pen. That wasn't so hard, was it, dear? Not at all. I didn't know then that I'd been tricked. That the document I'd signed wasn't what I thought it was. That Eleanor had inserted clauses I hadn't noticed, buried in the dense legal language, designed to protect her son from my gold-digging tendencies. The wedding was beautiful. I don't remember most of it, the stress, the exhaustion, the constant feeling of being judged, but I remember walking down the aisle and seeing Christopher's face. He looked happy. I looked happy. For one day, Eleanor's influence faded into the background. We moved into a house in Lakewood, a nice neighborhood not far from the hospital. We talked about kids, about travel, about the future we'd build together. I didn't know that the foundation was already cracking. 6 months into our marriage, my grandfather died. He was 92, a retired farmer who had lived through the Depression, fought in World War II, and built a small fortune through decades of careful investing. He was my favorite person in the world, a gruff, loving man who taught me how to fish, how to drive a tractor, and how to stand up for myself. His death hit me harder than I expected. I flew back to Oklahoma for the funeral, held my grandmother's hand as they lowered his casket into the ground, and tried not to fall apart. A week later, I got a call from his lawyer. Lauren, I'm sorry to bother you at a difficult time, but your grandfather's will has some provisions you need to be aware of. Okay. He's left you a significant inheritance. Approximately $2 million, after taxes. I nearly dropped the phone. $2 million. My grandfather, the farmer who drove a 10-year-old truck and wore coveralls to church, had left me $2 million. He wanted you to have it. He was very proud of you, of everything you've accomplished. I don't know what to say. Take your time. We can discuss the details when you're ready. I hung up, my mind spinning. $2 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. It could pay off my student loans, buy a house, provide for future children. It could change everything. But something stopped me from telling Christopher. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. I did. But I didn't trust his mother. And I didn't trust the prenup I'd signed. I called the lawyer back the next day. Can we keep this confidential? My husband doesn't know about the inheritance yet, and I'm not ready to share. Of course. Your grandfather structured the inheritance as a separate trust, solely in your name. It's not marital property. You're not required to disclose it unless you choose to. What about the prenup? I signed something that said anything I brought into the marriage. The inheritance came after the marriage. The prenup doesn't apply to assets acquired after the wedding, unless you commingle them. As long as you keep the inheritance separate, in a trust, in an account in your name only, it remains yours. I felt a wave of relief. Thank you. I'll think about what to do. I flew back to Dallas with a secret. $2 million, hidden from my husband and his mother, sitting in a trust one controlled completely. I told myself I wasn't being dishonest. I was being careful. I'd seen how Eleanor operated, how she manipulated situations to protect her son's interests. If she knew about the inheritance, she'd find a way to claim it. I was sure of it. So I kept quiet. The next few months were strange. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, lived my life. Christopher never asked about money. His family had enough that he never worried about it. Eleanor continued to make passive-aggressive comments about my modest background, and I smiled and nodded and said nothing. But inside, I was changing. I'd always been open, trusting, quick to share. Now I had a secret. And secrets change you. I started paying attention to the prenup. Really paying attention, reading the fine print, understanding what I'd signed. What I found made my blood run cold. The document I'd signed wasn't just a standard prenup. It was a carefully crafted legal instrument designed to protect Christopher's family money, and to ensure that I couldn't claim any of it, even if the marriage ended because of his infidelity or abuse. But that wasn't the worst part. Buried in the document was a clause I hadn't noticed, a clause that said any inheritance I received during the marriage, even if kept separate, could be claimed by Christopher in the event of a divorce, if it could be proven that I'd concealed it. I'd concealed it. By not telling Christopher about the inheritance, I'd technically violated the prenup. If Eleanor found out, she could use it against me. I felt sick. I called my lawyer, not the one Eleanor had used, but my own, a woman named Deborah who specialized in family law. Can they do this? Can they take my inheritance? Deborah read the document carefully. It's aggressive. Unusual. But you signed it, Lauren. That makes it harder to challenge. What if I didn't understand what I was signing? You'd have to prove that you were coerced or that the terms were unconscionable. That's a high bar. So I'm trapped. For now. But there are options. You could renegotiate the prenup with Christopher. Or you could simply keep the inheritance separate and hope it never comes up. She'll find out. Eleanor always finds out. Then you need to be prepared. I left Deborah's office feeling more alone than ever. I loved Christopher. I wanted my marriage to work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that his mother was watching, waiting for me to slip. The inheritance became my secret sanctuary. I didn't touch the money, it sat in a trust, growing slowly, a safety net I hoped I'd never need. Every time Eleanor made a cutting comment, I thought about the $2 million she didn't know about. Every time she treated me like a gold digger, I thought about the fact that I was the one with the secret wealth. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just survival. The problem started in year 2. Christopher had always worked long hours, financial advising is demanding, but he started working longer. Late nights at the office. Weekend meetings. Trips to conferences in cities that seemed more recreational than professional. I told myself it was normal. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that my mother-in-law had already done enough damage, and I didn't need to add suspicion to the list. But the signs were there. His phone was always face down. He'd step into another room to take calls. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say a client and change the subject. The perfume started showing up on his collar. Not always the same scent, different ones, as if he couldn't keep track. He'd explain it away as hugging female colleagues or sitting next to someone on a plane. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the doubts grew. Eleanor, meanwhile, had escalated her campaign against me. She'd started showing up at our house unannounced, just to check in. She'd criticize my cooking, my decorating, my parenting, though we didn't have children yet. You really should consider staying home once you have kids, she said once. It's so much better for their development. I'm a doctor, Eleanor. I can't just stop working. Christopher makes enough to support you. You could focus on the family. I want to work. My career is important to me. Is it more important than your marriage? The question hung in the air. I didn't have an answer. The breaking point came in year 3. I came home early from work, a rare luxury, and found Christopher in our bedroom, packing a suitcase. Going somewhere? He looked up, startled. Conference. In Chicago. I told you about it. No, you didn't. I must have forgotten. It's been busy. I watched him pack. Shirts, ties, a suit. No casual clothes. No toiletries that I could see. Forgetting the toothpaste? He paused. I'll buy some there. Something didn't add up. But I was tired of fighting, tired of questioning, tired of being the suspicious wife. Okay. Have a good trip. He kissed my forehead, not my lips, and left. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I looked at his computer. It was password protected, but he'd left it open, a text conversation visible on the screen. Can't wait to see you. The hotel is booked. Same. This weekend is going to be amazing. The messages were from a woman named Madison. I didn't know her. I'd never heard Christopher mention her. I read more. Are you sure your wife won't find out? She's clueless. Don't worry about her. I'm not worried. Just being careful. I closed the computer. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I sat in the dark, staring at nothing, processing what I'd just read. He was having an affair. Maybe multiple affairs. And he didn't care if I found out, or he was so confident in my obliviousness that he'd stopped hiding it. I thought about confronting him. Demanding answers. Tearing apart the marriage I'd tried so hard to build. But another thought surfaced, colder and more strategic. If I confront him now, he'll tell his mother. Eleanor will use the prenup against me. She'll try to take my inheritance. I couldn't let that happen. So I did nothing. I went to work. I came home. I smiled when Christopher returned from his conference, asked him how it went, pretended to believe his lies. Inside, I was planning. I called Deborah the next week. I think my husband is having an affair. Possibly multiple affairs. And I want to know what my options are for leaving. Deborah didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. The prenup is going to be your biggest obstacle. It's heavily skewed in his favor. What does that mean for me? It means you won't get much in terms of assets. But your inheritance is protected, as long as you kept it separate. I did. Good. Then your biggest risk is the concealment clause. If Eleanor can prove you hid the inheritance, she could argue that you violated the prenup. How would she prove that? She'd need evidence. Emails, texts, bank statements. Anything that shows you knew about the inheritance and deliberately concealed it. I've been careful. No emails. No texts. The only people who know are my lawyer and me. Then you're probably safe. But if you file for divorce, Eleanor will hire investigators. They'll look at everything. What do I do? Get your ducks in a row. Document everything, the affairs, the prenup, your mother-in-law's behavior. Don't confront Christopher until you're ready to leave. And whatever you do, don't commingle the inheritance. I followed her advice. I started documenting. Screenshots of his text messages. Photos of the perfume on his collar. A log of his late nights and suspicious trips. I kept everything in a locked drawer at the hospital, where Christopher would never think to look. I also started planning my exit. I opened a separate bank account, in my name only, at a credit union Christopher had never heard of. I started saving a portion of each paycheck, building a cushion in case I needed to leave quickly. The inheritance sat in its trust, untouched, a silent witness to my marriage's slow collapse. Eleanor continued her campaign, unaware that I was preparing to leave her son. You seem distant lately, Lauren. Is everything okay at home? Everything's fine. Christopher mentioned you've been working late. You really should spend more time at home. I'll take that under advisement. I was polite. I was pleasant. I gave her nothing. Inside, I was counting down the days. The end came on a random Tuesday. Christopher had been gone for 3 days, a client retreat in Miami. I'd used the time to pack a bag, gather my documents, and prepare what I was going to say. He walked in the door at 8 p.m., tired but satisfied. "Hey, babe. Missed you." I didn't respond. He looked at me, finally noticing my expression. "What's wrong? Who is Madison?" The color drained from his face. "What?" I found the texts. The hotel bookings. The weekend plans. "Who is she?" He tried to recover. "She's a client." "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. You've been having an affair. Probably more than one. And you've been lying to me about it for months." "I haven't." Don't lie to me. I have screenshots. I have photos. I have everything." He sat down on the couch, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. When were you going to tell me? Or were you just planning to keep lying forever?" "I don't know. I was confused. The marriage hasn't been good." "The marriage hasn't been good because you haven't been in it." He didn't deny it. He just sat there, silent, defeated. "I want a divorce." "Lauren. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I want a divorce. I've already contacted a lawyer." He looked up, surprised. "You have?" "I've been planning this for months. Since I found the first set of texts. I gave you chances to stop. You didn't." "Does my mother know?" "Not yet. But she will." I handed him a folder. Inside, copies of the screenshots, the hotel bookings, the perfume-stained shirts I'd saved in a Ziploc bag. "Your mother will probably try to use the prenup against me. But I've already spoken to my lawyer. The prenup is aggressive, but it's not ironclad. And your affairs, plural, give me leverage." "You're threatening me?" "I'm protecting myself." "There's a difference." He read the documents, his face pale. "What do you want?" "Half of everything we acquired during the marriage. And for you to sign a document stating that my inheritance, which you didn't know about, and which isn't marital property, remains mine." "Inheritance?" "My grandfather left me $2 million. I've kept it in a separate trust, untouched. It's not yours. It's not your mother's. It's mine. You hid money from me?" "I protected what was mine. The way your mother taught me." He stared at me, his expression a mix of anger and grudging respect. "She's going to kill me." "Probably. But that's not my problem. Eleanor found out 2 days later. I know because she showed up at my hospital, demanding to see me. The receptionist called my office, her voice nervous. "Dr. Chen? There's a woman here to see you. She's insistent." "I know who it is. Tell her I'm with a patient. She says she'll wait." She did. For 3 hours. When I finally came out, she was sitting in the waiting area, her posture rigid, her eyes blazing. "We need to talk." "We can talk here." "I'd prefer somewhere more private." "This is as private as it gets." She stood up, walked toward me, her voice low and furious. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can take my son's money and walk away?" "I'm not taking his money. I'm taking what's mine. The inheritance was left to me by my grandfather. It has nothing to do with your family. You hid it. I protected it. There's a difference." Christopher told me about the prenup. About the concealment clause. "I'll see you in court." Go ahead. I have screenshots of your son's affairs. Text messages. Hotel bookings. Perfume-stained shirts. Do you really want that evidence presented in open court? Her face went pale. Your son cheated on me, Eleanor. Repeatedly. While his mother was busy trying to take my inheritance. I have the proof. And I'm not afraid to use it. You're a monster. I learned from the best. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the tile floor. I watched her go, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction. Not relief. Just exhaustion. The divorce was settled 6 months later. Christopher signed the agreement without a fight. His lawyer advised him that the affair evidence was too damaging to risk a trial. I kept my inheritance, plus a fair share of the assets we'd acquired during the marriage. Eleanor refused to speak to me. I didn't care. I moved into a new apartment, smaller but mine. I changed my name back to my maiden name, Chen, and focused on rebuilding my life. The inheritance remained untouched, a safety net I hoped I'd never need. It's been 2 years since the divorce. I've rebuilt my life, piece by piece. The apartment is cozy, filled with books and plants and a cat who doesn't care about my past. My practice is thriving. I've been promoted to head of pediatrics, a position I never could have imagined when I was starting out. I'm dating again. Casually, carefully, with no expectations. A man named David, a high school teacher, steady and kind, with a laugh that makes me forget my worst days. He knows about the divorce. Not all the details, but enough. He doesn't push. He doesn't judge. He just listens. You're stronger than you think, he told me once. I'm stronger than I was. That's all anyone can ask. The inheritance is still there, untouched. I've thought about using it, paying off student loans, buying a house, traveling. But something holds me back. It's my secret, my safety net, the thing Eleanor couldn't take. Maybe someday I'll use it. Or maybe I'll leave it to my own children, whoever they are, whenever they come. Christopher and I don't talk. I see him sometimes, at mutual events, and we nod politely and move on. I heard through the grapevine that he's seeing someone new, a real estate agent with a bright smile and no prenup. I hope she's smarter than I was. Eleanor has faded from my life. No more passive-aggressive comments, no more attempts to control. I'm free. The question that started all this, was I wrong to hide my inheritance? I've answered it 1,000 times. No. I wasn't wrong. The prenup was designed to trap me, to protect her son at my expense. The inheritance was mine, given to me by a grandfather who loved me and wanted me to be secure. I hid it because I had to. Because the woman who raised my husband taught me that trust was a weapon and secrets were survival. I don't regret it. I regret the marriage. I regret trusting Christopher. I regret letting Eleanor manipulate me for years. But hiding the inheritance? That was the smartest thing I ever did. The door Eleanor opened wasn't just an exit from her son's life. It was an entrance to mine. I walked through. And on the other side, I found myself. Today, I'm sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sun set over Dallas. The cat is curled up in my lap, purring. David is inside, making dinner, something that smells like garlic and love. I think about Eleanor sometimes. Her fury, her entitlement, her certainty that she would win. She didn't. I did. Not because I'm smarter or better. Because I was willing to play the long game, to protect what was mine, to wait until the moment was right. The inheritance is still there. $2 million, waiting. I've started thinking about what to do with it, donate some, invest some, use some to buy a house. David and I have talked about moving in together, about the future, about what comes next. I'm not in a hurry. I've learned that patience is a weapon, that secrets can be survival, that sometimes the best revenge is a life well lived. Christopher's new relationship seems to be going well. I hope it lasts. I hope he's learned something from his mistakes. I don't wish him ill, I just don't think about him much anymore. Eleanor is still Eleanor. I heard she's been telling people that I swindled her son, that I hid money and broke his heart. I don't correct her. Let her tell her stories. The people who matter know the truth. The prenup is in a drawer somewhere, gathering dust. The inheritance is in a trust, growing slowly. And I'm here, on this balcony, with this cat and this man and this life I've built. Not bad for a girl from Oklahoma. The question that haunted me, should I have told Christopher about the inheritance, doesn't haunt me anymore. No. I shouldn't have. Because Christopher wasn't my partner. He was his mother's son. And his mother would have taken everything if I'd let her. I didn't let her. I hid my inheritance. I protected myself. I survived. And now, I'm thriving. Today, David and I bought a house together. Not a mansion, not an estate, just a comfortable 3-bedroom in a neighborhood we love. The inheritance paid for most of it, with enough left over for emergencies. We're not married. Maybe someday, but not yet. I'm not in a hurry. Christopher and Eleanor have faded into the background. I hear things sometimes, through mutual friends, but I don't seek out information. They're part of my past. Not my present. Not my future. The cat is asleep on the couch. David is reading in the armchair. I'm writing this, thinking about all the years I spent being underestimated, undervalued, overlooked. Eleanor thought I was a gold digger. She thought I was after her son's money. She never understood that I had my own money, my own career, my own life. She never understood that the only thing I wanted from her son was love. And when he couldn't give me that, I walked away. The prenup Eleanor tricked me into signing was supposed to protect her son. Instead, it taught me something valuable: always read the fine print. Always trust your instincts. And always, always protect what's yours. I walked through the door she opened. And on the other side, I found freedom. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.